Hey, Neil McDonnell here. Welcome to LinkedIn Live. Today is March 23rd, 2022. I think I'm going to start putting the date on the videos when I do it because it's just fun to look back. When I watch videos, I'm like curious when people record them. But also, I want you to understand that a lot of the content that I share, 80% at least, is what we call evergreen, meaning it will last year over year because it's advice that fits you going out and it doesn't really change. Something might change on if I try to give specifics of opportunities that are coming out this next year. Well, that's not evergreen, but most of the stuff I share is evergreen. So I like the idea of putting a dates time stamp on there. Wanted to quickly do an introduction first as we're getting started, just in case you don't know who I am. I'm Neil McDonnell. I've spent 20 years in government contracting from basically 1998 till 2017. So when I got out of the Army, I started running multiple Govcon businesses. And in those, I sold to the federal government, defense agencies, civilian agencies, the White House, all sorts of different agencies, and gained a lot of experience working with agencies as primes, working with small business teaming partners, and with large prime contractors. So I have a lot of experience doing the work with federal agencies, working with teaming partners, and understanding what it takes to build those relationships that lead to success. And that's what I want to share with you. I also run the Govcon Chamber of Commerce. I started that at the end of 2017, beginning of 2018. And the Govcon Chamber of Commerce is focused on really trying to help people understand that government contracting is not a secret, it's just a process. And so in that organization, we really try to teach the process to people on getting started. So if you're just getting started, especially trying to make that first million, there's a lot of guidance we put in there. An example is we have this small business professionals directory. It has over 1,000 names for people you can call in the federal government to get started learning more about an agency. I'd encourage you to visit govconchamber.com. Go get those free directories. Everything on the chamber is free. Membership's free. The whole point of it is just my way of giving back. Paying it forward is what we call it, right? And so that's the whole purpose of that organization. I'm taking a couple of seconds watching as people come on board. And I'm also looking at some of my notes that I have here just to remind me of what I want to talk about, right? I don't want to just completely wing it. I am encouraging you as you come in, take a minute and put in the chat your company name, your core competency. It's a great way for me to learn who you are and follow back up later. But it's also great for other people to see who you are, for each of you to see who you are. That way we know what your company does. Maybe we might want to team up with you at some point. This is a very easy way to do an introduction. There's a lot of people out there who could teach content, and we try to niche down. My focus is on making you money. That I can talk to you all about government contracting across a lot of different topic areas, but the topic area that I find I'm best at and that lacks the most people helping you is how to make more money, right? What's the process for making more money? It really is a process. There's nothing magic, right? It's not a secret. And so my content that I deliver is on that. And that's today's topic, is along those lines. Today's topic is going to be on how to reach the federal buyers before the RFI drops. And I'm going to explain that in a couple seconds. I'm just giving people a chance to log on, and I think I gave them enough time. So again, put your name and company and core competency in the comments. If you're watching this on YouTube on a replay, you're watching it or listening to it on a podcast, go ahead and put your comment in there because I will see that later. And so will other people who come along and track what you do. Okay, so let's get started with today's topic. Again, it's, how to go after the RFI before it drops, how to reach that federal buyer before the RFI drops. And the reason I chose this topic today to expand on is to follow up on a topic I talked about last week that's related to the federal acquisition roadmap. In there, I described the process for how the federal government buys. And it's pretty straightforward. They have an informal period of an idea comes to their mind and they're thinking at it at that level. And then they begin to think about the requirements in the program office, just the people who do the work. They're like, well, what else would we want? What should it look like? What should that requirement be? Whether it's in the professional services or software development or a new wing to a hospital, whatever it is, they're thinking about it. When they begin to gel this idea into something formal that they think they're going to have to find money for and budget and begin to procure, it moves to what I call the formal procurement or part of the acquisition roadmap. And this begins with market research. It's where the government reaches out to industry to find out about people who could perhaps provide the work. So that's sources sought. They're looking for companies that can do the work. They're also looking for industry to contribute to their thinking on it. And that's what the RFI is for, request for information. And at that point, they really do want to have discussions with you. And then the rest moves forward into the natural RFP and award, et cetera. The part I want to talk about today is shifting left. And shifting left just means getting earlier in the process. If everything's a process, the sooner in the process you do something, the more influence you have. And in this particular case, some examples of why you might want to shift left are reducing competition, right? If you shift from the RFP, request for proposal, where everybody sees it in SAM.gov, if you shift to the left to when the RFI is coming out in market research, many people aren't playing in there. A lot of people won't play in there because they're unaware of the RFI. A lot of people won't participate in there because they feel like RFIs are a waste of time. I've written to the government and they haven't ever awarded me anything. So they're just kind of soured on the idea, which one day I'll do a topic on maybe how to reset your mindset on that. But so if you respond only to the RFP, you're maximizing the competition you have to deal with. When you go to the RFI and you're going in there, the competition is far reduced. And what I'm suggesting, and what is true, is if you get to the buyer before the RFI even comes out on SAM.gov or whatever tool the government will use, then you have far less competition. I would submit it's 80% reduction. And now this gets into more me guessing my facts. But think about this, right? If you get to the buyer before they even write an RFI and put it out, that's a lot of hard work. But if you do that hard work, none of your competitors are there. And you have this chance to really begin to talk to the customers. And this goes into my second reason for shifting left. It's because you can influence those requirements. With the program office, you can influence what they're thinking about. Remember, they have an idea and they start thinking about the requirements. Getting in there and talking about the requirements from your point of view or your expertise, they will listen. They will want to know what's your best practices. What are you dealing with other customers? What are you experiencing with other customers or delivering for to other customers that they should consider? And so by shifting left and talking before the RFI drops, you'll be able to influence those requirements. And the last reason for shifting left that I want to talk about is this ability to influence the acquisition approach or path, right? So when you think about the acquisition decisions that the government makes, they decide, is it going full and open or is it going small? Is it going GSA on a GSA schedule, or is it going on a regular, some other unique contract vehicle, or is it maybe going direct award to an SDVO or an 8A? So they're going to be making these decisions. Which NAICS code is it going to be on? Maybe which certifications are required out there, like ISO certifications or CMMI certifications. When you get in before the RFI, you can influence this before they even begin to talk about it. Some people might say you can influence in the RFI, and I'm one of those. You can use the RFI to influence, but your influence begins to shrink at that point and forward because they're already thinking about it. And they're like, well, I think we're probably going to set this aside to women-owned firm. I think what this one really needs to go on this contract vehicle. What you want to do is to get to that opportunity. That RFI is basically an opportunity just at the earliest stages. You want to get to that opportunity before the contracting officer is even really aware of it. If you can get in there with the buyers, the program office, who are the true buyers, right? But if you can get there, you can shape the whole idea of acquisition by getting them to have confidence in you, and you and your company. And you might be able to say, hey, we're a hub zone, by the way. So any myths they might have about a hub zone firm is more for facility management than it is for software development or cyber. It's like, no. We're a hub zone firm and we do tens of millions of dollars a year in federal cyber or something. That influence needs to happen before other people get in there and start shaping it down. So anyways, that's the idea of today's topic, is to really help you understand shifting left is how you're going to be able to reach that federal buyer before the RFI drops. And so I want to talk about how do you reach that federal buyer. By the way, as I'm going along, if you have questions that you want me to talk about, I'm not tracking on the chat at the moment. I'll look at that towards the end of what I want to get across, but I'll look at the end. So if you have questions, put them into the chat. I'll track on that. So a couple of things I wanted to point out about how do you reach the federal buyer beforehand. And what I'm trying to do is give you guidance. You could walk away today and begin to try to put this in place. This is the stuff I teach when I support customers directly, or when I have people buy my course. It's this advice specifically that I give them. So the first thing is you need to determine if you're going after a specific agency, or if you're going after a specific core competency across multiple agencies. So let me expand on that. If you're going after a particular agency, which is a great way to focus, let's take the Navy as an example. So, you've got the Department of the Defense. The Department of Navy is in the Department of Defense. And underneath the Department of Navy, you have the Navy and the Marine Corps, right? So let's take the Navy, and under that, you have these major buying commands. And one of them is NAVC. And there's a bunch in there, and each one of these Navy ones could be as big as a whole, like the Department of Education all by itself. And so you want to come down and pick a single agency and say, that's where I want to get in. Those are the buyers I want to reach before RFIs drop. And if you do that, if you can bring yourself down below the DoD, below Navy, down into a buying command, I would even say that you could go further down into, like, let's say, warfare centers. But NAVC is a good one, Naval Surface Warfare, or Navy Sea System Command, I think is what. See, I've been saying the acronym for so long, I forgot what the name stands for. But anyways, going in there, you choose that, and everything I'm going to say in a minute allows you to focus deep in there. Contrastly, you could sit there and say, I want to go after cloud services. Let's say your company is a cloud provider. You provide Microsoft or Amazon services, and you're a cloud provider to the government. You can sit there and choose to go after all, not all, but like you can go after the top cloud offices in the Navy, in the Army, in the Air Force. Let's just stick DoD for a second, right? Now you can sit there and say, well, I want to learn everything, and I want to reach the buyers or program offices who control cloud technology or anything to do with cloud. Because you focus on your core competency, it's okay from people like me who give you advice for you to go to multiple agencies. It's when you're selling something like software development, just stay in one place. But if you're doing cloud, running their whole cloud environment, there's not as many customers to reach. And so you can go across a couple agencies. So first thing is determine whether you're pursuing the agency or whether you're pursuing a particular core competency. The next thing is find and build relationships with federal buyers and influencers. Excuse me. But in this particular case, in order for you to have any success, you need to find and build relationships. So you might have some, but in order to build new relationships, you need to determine, okay, I'm going after NAVC. Who would I go into with NAVC? And so in NAVC, you need to determine the different roles that are in there. So an example of roles could be the contracting officer, like we talked about. That's a great role, one person. Next role is, and when I say role, it means several people could be in that job. So small business professionals at NAVC, you can be targeting them. I want to be able to reach out to them, introduce myself, et cetera. And then the last role is the program office. If you're in logistics and supply chain, right, finding the people who are in charge of logistics and within NAVC will enable you to then begin to push down. Well, these program office people are the ones who actually do the work. Small business professionals, in my way of describing it, are liaisons. So they help industry and government come together. And then contracting officers are basically the ones who sign the I's, or dot the I's, cross the T's, and sign the documents. And so those kind of people, though, you want to find and build relationships. And I describe so many different ways for you to be able to go out. I'm not going to do it in here because it's a short amount of time we have, but you can go out and find the exact people, their phone number and email address. And when you have a process for reaching out to them, you will be able to begin to build that relationship, which allows you to begin to learn more about opportunities and reach them and influence them before the RFI drops. So I want to talk about directly or indirectly influencing an opportunity. Just so we're on the same bandwidth or same page here. Directly means you call somebody, you talk to them. You go into their office, you talk with them. I'm directly talking with John, who's the program manager. I'm directly talking with Jane. She's the contracting officer. That's directly influencing them. Indirectly influencing them is you could also think of it as passively doing it, where whatever material you have is doing that work for you. So it could be white papers that you put out. You might write a white paper on a particular approach to, using a certain type of grass in military bases on the lawns, which will reduce the cost of watering, and they grow a little slower, but they grow together so they're tight and they can handle the wear and tear, whatever it is, right? You might have something like that. Well, writing some sort of white paper that you can send forward. You can have it on your website so people can download it. You put it on LinkedIn, people can get access to it. But you could also forward it into, like, let's say a small business professional and say, could you pass this along? And even though you're directly doing that, the conversation is between the program office and that white paper. It's not between you and that person. And so that's what I mean by indirectly. You're indirectly influencing their thinking. You're helping them see different ways of doing something. It's a great thing when you can talk about your experiences somewhere else. And so this might be another one, is video content that you create. You could create content that describes, let's say, one of my favorite things in an old company I had was SharePoint. And so I created content around, hey, top 10 things you should think about when migrating SharePoint from this version to this version. By doing that, if these people were thinking about, remember I said they have an idea and then they're thinking about it before they ever talk to the contracting officer. If they're thinking about migrating in the next year or 2 years or whatever, they might be doing their own research. What do we need to worry about? What do we need to think about? Obviously, directly, they can get information from people like us, but indirectly, they might download my video content that walks them through and says, hey, you know what we do is we say in migrations, forget about the technology. Anybody can do the technology. It's adoption. Your users are going to really revolt if the migration is not smooth. And so when we come in, what we recommend to you is to make sure you put the user first. The technology and the SharePoint apps and all that second. And so we say things like this: when you really know your content, when you really know your area of expertise, and you can communicate it with a white paper or a video content, people will reach back out to you. So that's indirectly influencing what they're thinking about. First, I'm getting them to think about an approach to SharePoint migration. And then second, I'm getting them to think about maybe reaching out and getting us to expand on that topic. So a couple other ideas just really quickly on indirectly, how you can indirectly do stuff. You can have a podcast, right? A podcast is where you just, basically it's what I'm doing here, but without the video, right? And so think about your own area of expertise. Somebody asked me, I'm sorry, I forgot who you were. I'm all focused on this topic. But anyway, somebody asked me yesterday about, could I teach them this process I'm doing for LinkedIn Live? I'm like, sure, I'll tell you, because it's LinkedIn will tell you, but I can tell you how I do it in the Govcon space. But it's a great tool to use to reach the audience, the intended audience. And you could do something similar with LinkedIn Live or with podcasts. And podcasts are very easy to start up. They're very easy to record. People sometimes make them overly complicated. For example, I could make this overly complicated by really working hard on my background and trying to put up some plants and bookshelves and, whatever. Or I could just use the office I work in, which has my whiteboard that I live and breathe on. And I bring my content to you, and it's just you and I talking about the content. So podcasts are a great way. And another way to think about the content that could be very helpful to your buyers and be able to reach them before they drop that RFI is work with, I call it OEM interviews, but let's use Microsoft SharePoint, which I did at my last company. I could reach out to third-party companies who sell products that work with SharePoint. I could reach out and do an interview with them. What makes your product so great? Why should we care? Why should the government care? I could ask the questions the government might want to ask, record it. That vendor would love the chance to market it just in one more channel, my channel, one more channel, potentially reaching their intended targets, which are the federal buyers, but they're just coming through me and my podcast or my LinkedIn Live, whatever you want to, whatever channel I use. But they would welcome that. You're able to borrow their expertise and deliver it to your customer. Your customer will appreciate that you're bringing it. They'll know that it's the other company who's that expertise, but they see you as the person who can consolidate a lot of that information that sits out on the internet or wherever, and help them with their job of expanding their idea into an official requirement. They have to do their thinking on it. These people that you would interview could help the federal buyer do that. So That's another example of indirectly reaching out. So directly is calling, having meetings and talking to the customer. Indirectly are white papers, video, YouTube channels, right? LinkedIn, getting engaged on LinkedIn. So let me kind of wrap up this topic by giving you some specific tasks you can do today, tomorrow, to get going, right? It's not enough. I don't like just telling you the how, right? I really want you to have I don't like telling you the what. I want to give you the how, right? So you don't need more information. What you need is more actionable steps you can take. In my opinion, when I talk to a lot of folks who are in similar roles as you, your question is, what can I do next to move me from where I'm at to where I want to go? And that's why I'm really trying to get to this stage where these LinkedIn Lives have that. That's my outcome that I want to give to you. So anyways, here's what I'm recommending you do right now if you want to write this down. So the first thing is, if you haven't done this already, write down what agency, identify the agency or the command like NAVC that you want to reach out to. Be very specific about it. If you want to achieve any kind of success towards what your goals are, you need to move forward incrementally. You don't do the whole thing at once. You move forward incrementally. So what I'm talking about right now is very incremental. I want to get into the Navy and NAVC. Perfect. The next thing is have intro meetings with one contracting officer, one small business, let's say it's NAVC, right? One contracting officer at NAVC, one small business professional at NAVC, and one program office representative that fits your space at NAVC, right? And you insert your own agency into the NAVC or your own command. When I say have an intro meeting, of course it means go find out who those people are. So if you want to get started, you can go to the Govcon chamber and download this free directory I have out there of over 1,000 points of contact in the federal government, right? Agency points of contact that are small business professionals. Start there. You can get in and start talking to them. Another great way to do research, just giving you a tip on a contracting officer. There's a lot of ways I would tell you to go to a contracting officer, like the databases, et cetera. But my favorite one to give you advice on is go call and set up a quick appointment with your local PTAC. PTACs are tied to the federal agencies they support. Many of them have personal relationships, professional relationships with contracting officers, because contracting officers want to work with industry. They want to work with small businesses. And so they'll reach out to PTACs, say, hey, we're looking for this. Do you know anybody? And because PTACs support us in the industry, they would be more than happy to introduce you to somebody that they knew. But you could also just talk to the small business specialist and say, this is what I'm looking to do. Who's the contracting officer who's best for me to reach out to? Today is not about telling you all the ways that you can reach out to them, but the first step is to identify the agency you want to go after. Second step is identify 3 people you're going to call tomorrow, right? You're just going to reach out and introduce your company. The third step is to I talked past couple of days, I talked about call planning, right? So go back and watch some of those videos. You can find them on YouTube or on LinkedIn or wherever. But one question I want you to ask each one of them, this single question is, what are your plans for? So if for me, it's SharePoint, let's say, if that's my old company, I want you to write a question that says, what are your plans for SharePoint as you go into 2022 and 2023? What are your concerns around SharePoint is another great question. But if you write that one question, what are your plans for, for the hospital facility, whatever your thing is. I don't want to use a ton of examples, but put your core competency at the end of what are your plans for, right? What are your plans for supply chain and logistics next year? By asking this question, it's an open-ended question that could lead them to just start talking about some of their goals, et cetera. When you set up a meeting, especially with a program office, you want to be prepared. But having that one question lined up, and I'm just tracking my time to make sure I'm good here. Having that question lined up will allow you to begin to pull threads. As they talk about what their plans are, you can think about, how could I fit in their plans? How could I help with their plans? When they talk about their plans, they might talk about actual stated goals, and they might talk about challenges. So having that one question is a great, broad, open-ended question that will allow you to pull threads and learn more about that program office. So schedule a meeting with the KO, small business professional, and the program office. Each one of them use that question. What are your plans for blank? And the last thing I would recommend you do, and in particular, do this with a contracting officer, but you could also ask a specialist, small business specialist, is ask them what their specific acquisition process is. I've described a generic process, right? But each agency does their own thing. They all follow the FAR or the DFAR or whatever, but they do their own thing. And so finding out how do you guys do it here at NAVC, let's say, in particular, what I want to know is, how do I hear about planned RFIs coming up? So this is a question I want you to ask the KO in particular, and the small business specialist as a secondary. But with the KO, market research is formal. And when an opportunity gets into their world, everything's formal. But somewhere along the lines, somebody's got stuff that is just this list of ideas that are going to be coming out. People are talking about it. And just asking, how would I hear about it? Some people will tell you, you're not going to hear about it. SAM's the place you go. You just go there. Whatever. You're killing me. But some other people will say, well, I hear about it. So if you stay in touch, I'll try to let you know. And other people will say, well, you know what? You do SharePoint, and Joe's doing SharePoint. So any RFI that's going to be around SharePoint's coming from Joe. I'm like, well, can I meet Joe? So they move you over there. But it's important when you're going after an agency to understand, how do they do their acquisition or procurement lifecycle, or roadmap. And I think it was like USDA put out a great one. It was very detailed. So anybody in industry could go, hey, is this opportunity here? I'm thinking it's here on the roadmap. And the contracting officer, specialist, or whoever could go, no, it's over here. And by knowing where it's at, USDA really communicated to industry what they could do to participate. They're very open to industry engagement and market research. And so by you asking this question of the one agency, you'll find that out. Anyways, I'm going to pause here. Just a quick reminder of the topic, right? Is you want to shift left on the RFI before the RFI, so that you can get rid of the competition or reduce your competition. You can influence or increase your ability to influence the requirements and the acquisition approach. And so that's why we want you to shift left. And the way that you can begin to do that is to reach out to the KO, the small business specialist in the program office, and engage them. Ask them, how can you get moving forward? Feel free to shoot me a direct message if you want to expand on it. If you actually are going to follow some of this advice tomorrow, for example, reach out to me. Tell me you're going to do it. Tell me how it went afterwards. If you've got a clarification question, happy to answer it. I'd love it if you actually put it into the comments, because then other people can benefit from your question and my answer. But we'll go from there. All right, so got 3 minutes left. I'm going to take a look at the Q&A really quick. If you found value in here, by the way, give it a thumbs up so other people hear about it. Hey, David. So thank you very much for being engaged on here, David. Small business professionals right here. I said this in a comment on another one. What makes me an expert is I listen to the buyer, small business professionals, KOs, et cetera, and I repeat to industry what they're saying. And I really just try to put it in my own language. I'm going to look at some of these comments just really quick. This is perfect. And thank you, David, for putting this down. David's talking about, we could set up an introduction meeting if you're a good fit. And this is really important to remember, right? Small business professionals, or a lot of people, they're willing to help you. But maybe you could take a second and make sure you're ready to call that person. So for example, we would never want you to talk to the program office if you haven't properly done whatever you need to do. If you have zero experience and you're just coming in, I drive you to teaming with small businesses. The time you want to go to the program office is when it's really peer-to-peer. They're looking at you saying, oh, you did it in another agency, you can do it here. Let's talk. I don't want to put words into David's mouth or other people, but really I drive home that if you're at a certain stage of business maturity, small business maturity, sometimes you belong earlier in the cycle, and earlier in the cycle means don't work with the agency directly, work with small businesses to get experience. I would encourage anybody who's watching this, reach out to David. This is the second time that I've noticed he's been on, engaged in the comments. This is a small business professional willing to work with industry and help you navigate, in particular, Keyport under NAVC, Naval Surface Warfare Centers, especially if it's a fit. And I'd be willing to bet that he'll help you get to the right spot outside of NAVC if that's what you're looking for. But I think we're done here. I want to give a couple of last quick things. Just tomorrow's So tomorrow's plan is to talk about cold calling. That's what I'll be talking about tomorrow. How do you do cold calling and get in the door? And then there's a webinar I've got on April 5th. This is how to find and build relationships to earn more federal revenue. Go check out the link on govconchamber.com. On there, you can find a link that'll send you to registration. I encourage you to sign up for that. That's going to be a good content, allow us to focus tighter on a topic. And then remember, government contracting, it's not a secret. It's just a process. See you tomorrow.